Hi, welcome to the F1 Time Portal, a Formula One history podcast started by two Formula One turtlenecks. I'm your host, Reza.
And I'm your whatever gets you through the night host, Luigi. And today we're taking you back to the 1974 season, part 5. So let's go.
Yes, I've had to revert to fashion, Louis.
Yeah, you're moving into my territory.
I know. I'm going to have to look, maybe for the next year, maybe for 71, I'm going to have to revert back to my fan names because it's too hard. I am going into your territory. But yeah, turtlenecks. I like a good turtleneck.
Oh, it's what the drivers,
even today.
The drivers were wearing it back in those days.
That's right, exactly.
Along with their sideburns and things like that.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
You can go pop culture and I'll go music. That's what we can do. That's our lines. You don't cross over to music. I don't cross over to pop culture.
Okay. Whatever gets you through the night, that's a good song too.
Yeah, do you remember who sings it?
I'm enjoying the 70s.
Yeah. Who sings it?
I could guess, but I don't want to embarrass myself. You say it.
Okay, it's John Lennon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
It probably would have been embarrassing, right?
Yeah, I would have said the Beatles, but I knew it wasn't.
Yeah, they were not together. They were not a team at that stage.
They were not a team. No.
Okay, so we're up to race 11 of 15, the German Grand Prix, and one of the most exciting championships because we've got so many drivers that can still win it. So it's at Nürburgring, August 4, 14 laps. The reason why it's 14 laps, as we've said many times, each lap is about 22 kilometers, or what is that, about 15 or 14 miles. And the weather was overcast and showery. So for this year's race, the German race was bestowed with the title of the European Grand Prix. And despite being a very long track, the organisers chose to restrict the grid to 25 drivers.
What? Didn't they all agree that they were going to choose the number based on the circuit length? I mean, there were 25 drivers at the track that was only 3 kilometres long.
I know.
So by that standard, there should have been, 3 times as many drivers for this track.
I know. Even Mike Lang stated in his book, for no apparent reason. So with 31 entries, 6 were going to be left out.
Oh my gosh. So another really interesting thing was that weeks prior to this race, Lauda did some private testing at this track, and he was the first driver to ever complete the circuit in under 7 minutes, setting a time of 6 minutes 58.2 seconds. So everyone was aware that Lauda, despite his unlucky start to the season and in the earlier race, was still in good form.
Yeah, his position in the championship does not reflect what he should have got, I would say. And we have another F1 debut driver this season, Jacques Laffite in the Williams. So that's a driver we are going to be hearing a lot about. And we're starting to name drivers that I remember when I started watching Formula One. He's one of the first ones that was, Niki Lauda, of course, was driving when I was watching.
Yes, Niki Lauda. Yeah.
Not many of these drivers move into the 80s. Remember, we're still in 74. And there was another driver, Ian Ashley. He's not as memorable, sorry.
He's not as memorable.
Sorry, Ian Ashley and his family.
Okay. So, I'll be interested to hear about what these drivers get up to, Louis. I mean, you know them more than I do, so yeah.
Let's see. Well, during practice, seemingly unplanned, Australian Larry Perkins also made his Formula One debut as New Zealander Eamon was suffering from a heavy cold and handed his car to Perkins on day 2 of practice. So an unexpected debut for an Aussie.
So to practice, Lauda unsurprisingly secured pole with a time of 7 minutes and 8 seconds. What is it? No, 0.8 seconds. 7 minutes flat, 0.8. So close to breaking the 7-minute barrier. Wow. So there were a range of dramas through practice, with Peterson seriously damaging his Lotus 72E, which resulted in quite a workaround by the team taking parts from the newer Lotus to bring that car up to spec for practice on day 2, and many other incidents with drivers damaging their cars in their efforts to master this very difficult and daunting track.
Yeah. The rest of the grid was Regazzoni in second, 7 minutes, 1.1 seconds. So it shows that Lauda was, more than a second ahead of his own teammate. And Fittipaldi, Scheckter, Depailler and Reutemann.
So there was one timing anomaly that we learnt about from the Mike Lang book. Lauda set his time on day one and this became pole. However, on the second day of practice, Fittipaldi set a time of 7 minutes 2 seconds, 7 minutes 2 seconds 0.3, and this was credited as the fastest time of the day.
Yeah, however, the timing systems worked in such a way that it would only register if it was a driver's faster time. Therefore, it was understood that Lauda had set the faster time than Fittipaldi's, but because it was not faster than Lauda's time, it was not recorded. So it was a bit weird.
Wow. That would never happen today.
But Fittipaldi was still credited as third with that time. So I don't quite get it, to be honest.
I don't get it either.
Yeah.
Okay. So to race day, third place Fittipaldi was having trouble getting his McLaren into gear. And with his McLaren teammate Holm and Ix in the Lotus beside him, Fittipaldi was unable to stop his rear wheel from striking Holm's car. This is even before the race had even started. I think it's hard to tell. I don't know whether that was during the warm-up lap or anyway.
It was not very clear. And as a result of this incident, Holm's rear suspension was damaged and he was out.
What about Fittipaldi?
Well, he found gear and set off after the rest.
Lucky for him.
I'm not sure if this happened just before the start or if it was at the start. Either way, he took off.
Okay. So, but that's good for him because he was still in the contention for the championship. Holm was his big impact buffer and he took the brunt of the impact. Poor Holm. Where did he qualify?
He was 7th, so not too far behind his third-placed teammate. So, yeah. So to the rest of the field, in particular the leaders, Lauda made an uncharacteristically poor start and fell back to third. So I wouldn't call that nonsense or muffed. It's just...
No. Yep.
Yeah. But so the race leader was now Regazzoni and Scheckter was second in the Tyrrell.
Well, Lauda is really on form on this track, which he seemingly owns. He'll be fine if he's patient, I think.
Yeah, and patient he was not because on the opening lap, Lauda made a move to outbrake Scheckter and the two touched wheels, causing the Ferrari to spin out of control into the catch fences out.
Wow. That is an important moment in the championship context. And Lauda really learnt a lesson here, I think. Like Scheckter is quite an aggressive driver. Lauda had a better car and he was key informed driver. I think he blew it.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he he lost his patience and I think he cost himself. He may have eliminated himself from the championship or materially given his championship a big dent.
Yes, definitely. Yep.
Even Mike Lang mentions Regazzoni went on to complete the 6th dramatic opening lap of the season.
6.
He's keeping count. Yeah, he's keeping count. I was just digesting it. So we won't do that, but we appreciate that he did.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So at the end of lap 1, Regazzoni had a 3-second lead over Scheckter with Reutemann in third, then a small gap to Maas in the March, Peterson and the rest. And Fittipaldi, after his home takeout at the start of the race, he had stopped out on the circuit with a flat rear tyre and so he was also out.
That reduces the Lauda damage a bit, I guess.
Yes.
Not the weekend of the year for McLaren. And let's beat Mike Lang to it. This is the first bad weekend of the year for McLaren. I say this, but there are many others this season that I've already forgotten. But both out on lap 1, taken out by one another. That's going to take some beating.
Yes. I don't know how, though. They're out. So.
Yeah. Well, Holm broke the rules and leapt into the spare car and took off after the rest. There were complaints and he was black flagged just as Fittipaldi was returning to the pits with his left rear tyre virtually disintegrated.
Wow. And at the same time too. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm predicting that this is the worst race of the decade for McLaren, and we've still got 6.5 years to go.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call, wouldn't you say? I don't think many teams have this much drama. They're almost retiring 3 times with 2 cars.
So can
You know
I
what I
ask a
mean?
question though? Yeah, absolutely. And like he leapt into the spare car. Is that the first time we hear that as well, Louis?
It must have been the nuances of maybe because he was damaged before the race start. It's hard to tell. Like we said, we
Yeah.
couldn't quite work it out ourselves.
No. And I wonder why he was black flagged because it wasn't the car that he did qualifying in, probably.
Probably.
Okay. Interesting.
So Fittipaldi returned to the race, retired shortly after due to a damaged rear suspension.
Well, I admire that he kept going, tried to keep going. I mean, he's a championship contender. So despite all the bad things, he was up there. And to think this was all a domino effect of having his gear selection problems.
So, yeah, that's right. So by lap 4, and remember this is a 14-lap race, Regazzoni had built up a 10-second lead, with the only concern for the Ferrari team being that the weather was now very overcast.
Doesn't matter, Louis. They are tyre changing champions, remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So Scheckter remained in second, but he had Reutemann right on his tail. The attention turned to the battle for fourth between Peterson, Depailler, Ickx, Hailwood and Muss. These 5 were driving extremely closely and could not break away from one another. Depailler, while trying to pass Peterson, lost control and spun out of the race, which left 4 cars circulating very tightly.
Yeah, at the front, Regazzoni was leaving everyone further behind. And finally, Scheckter was pulling away from Reutemann. So that top 3 are really in a rhythm and they're out of reach. So by lap 11, the battle for fourth took on a new dimension when Mass had to retire when his engine blew, which left Hailwood behind the 2 Lotus drivers.
Hailwood in the McLaren landed awkwardly over one of the bumps. Remember, on this track, the cars were regularly airborne. Unfortunately, Hailwood veered to the right and straight into the guardrail. This would give him severe leg injuries and would bring to an end his F1 racing career.
Yeah, we're sorry to hear this. And of course, they didn't stop the race to extract the guy from the car. Standard, right? At least he survived.
Yes.
Regazzoni went on to win the race by 50 seconds ahead of Scheckter, giving Regazzoni his second ever F1 win and the lead in the championship.
No way. So this is very interesting how dominant, considering how dominant Lauda has been all this season.
Yeah, and some minor drama for Reutemann because on the final lap, a side plate on the rear aerofoil broke, which is the rear wing, and his car suddenly had handling issues. This meant the 2 Lotus drivers of Peterson and Ickx closed right up, but they didn't make it as Reutemann finished third, 0.9 seconds ahead of Peterson, who was himself 0.8 seconds ahead of Ickx.
It was mentioned by Mike Lang that Peterson finished ahead of Ickx because he had lifted less than Ickx when passing the scene of the Hailwood incident. So that's an interesting comment to be making by Mike.
Yeah, he's throwing shade on Peterson a bit, isn't he?
Yeah, because he didn't slow down enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Price had finished 6th, earning his first World Championship point in the shadow. So over to the championship ratings. Rosa, you. I'll do them, as it seems like Rosa might have a technical issue.
Hello?
So we have Regazzoni in the lead of the championship on 44 points, followed by Scheckter with 41, Lauda 38, and Fittipaldi on 37 points. And in the constructors, we have Ferrari on 57 points, McLaren on 48, and Tyrrell on 45. So very tight championship so far. So Rosa, I don't know if you're back from the tech issues, but I just did the championship standings.
Oh, did you? Yes. I couldn't hear you, Louis. Anyway.
I dropped out a little. So sorry about that. I'm not sure if that recorded, but let's see. I'll get that checked by our editor.
Okay. Didn't you say that Scheckter takes the lead in the championship, or was it just the race that he took the lead in?
Regazzoni took the lead in the championship.
Yeah, okay. So Scheckter's, second, 41. Wow. Okay.
Okay, so we're up to the next race of the season. We're up to race 12 of 15, the Austrian Grand Prix. You ready, Rosa?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So it's at the Österreich Ring. It's on August 18 and there's 54 laps and the weather is very hot. We haven't had a very hot race for a while, have we? Yeah. So this track is the fastest circuit of 74. So a great deal of attention was turned to aero.
So interestingly, McLaren had installed plastic skirting to the lower outside edges of their chassis.
Yeah, so we have something that we've, for the first mention, something called, I call it ground effect, right?
Well, I think it's the opposite. I think the intention was to stop the amount of air going under the car to enable improved airflow to the side radiators, as well as reducing drag. But interesting, they might have accidentally uncovered ground effect.
The anti-ground effect. Because ground effect, the ground effect that comes later in Formula One is about
sticking the car to the ground.
Yeah, and making the air go under the car. This is the opposite of that. So it's anti.
Yes. So, but the experiment didn't come to anything. The skirting was worn away due to the contact with the circuit.
Okay. So it makes me wonder if actions like this may have been the grandparent to the later ground effect that would be so effectively utilized later in the 70s. But let's see if we can remember this moment and say, did McLaren instigate the idea?
That's right. Yep. So there were a few driver dramas that changed the dynamic at this race, but all were with the midfield teams and the back end teams. They don't really impact the leading drivers in the championship. Don't worry, if they're interesting enough or involve a future champion, we'll mention them. But yeah, if not, we're not going to.
So yeah, it's brutal but true, right? So to first practice, everyone expected the Ferraris to be back on form, but it was instead, just like the season, the Brabhams' turn to shine.
Brabhams, they've been nowhere and now they're back.
Yeah.
Okay, so the heat was playing havoc and the Brabhams of Reutemann and Pache were the fastest for all of the practice sessions, except the last one, when Lauda surprised all by snatching pole by just 0.16 of a second from Reutemann. Even Fittipaldi surprised many by setting a time that earned third, relegating Pache to fourth.
Yeah, it's interesting that they were right up there out of nowhere. And the other championship contenders, Regazzoni was eighth, lapping 1.3 seconds slower than Lauda, and Scheckter was fifth in his Tyrrell. So to race day, there was a huge crowd of 150,000 people, which is like a 2020's attendance, on hand to watch Reutemann make a really strong start, and he duly charged into the lead, with Lauda following, then Pache. Regazzoni got himself up to fourth as Peterson had issues on the grid, and as a result was unable to start with the rest. So Regazzoni was able to take full advantage of the Lotus-sized space that was available to him.
So while there was no drama on the opening lap, Regazzoni got past Pache to get up to third place, and further back there was a lot of jostling going on. All the while, Reutemann did not seem distracted by the two Ferraris that were behind him, and by lap 10, had even started to creep away from them, while his teammate Pache was holding himself well in fourth place.
And this will be interesting as both Lauda and Regazzoni are genuine championship contenders, and I'm sure that they can sniff a win here, or at worst, a big haul of points. Has Lauda learnt from that early race move that he did on Scheckter? That's the question.
Well, unfortunately for him, his engine started to go off colour, and on lap 13, he fell back behind Regazzoni. And it got worse. He was out on lap 17. Wow. Ferrari, strike again.
Yeah, what a frustrating year. So to the new leading pair, Reutemann was still in the lead on lap 40 with Regazzoni only a few car lengths further back. So there's only 14 laps to go and Reutemann seems a little unflappable, doesn't he?
Yes.
So that's when Ferrari suddenly started to drop back. Regazzoni's rear tyre was losing air. And before the lap was over, Pache was up to second place.
What? Ferrari. Wow, really? But Brabham won too. This is a really strange season. Like Brabham not even been up there. We had a Tyrrell 1-2. Now we have a Brabham 1-2.
Yeah, and that's when Pache's Brabham coast to a halt as he had a fuel leak, which ended the very brief Brabham 1-2. And it was at about this time that Regazzoni, who was now 7 seconds behind Pache, drove into the pits.
So this allowed Peterson through, who had recovered from his troubled start. Then we had Depailler in the mix and Holm and Ickx.
And there have been many retirements this race. Where did these drivers actually qualify?
Holmwith's 10th, Depailler 14th, and X 20th.
Wow. So the drama at race end was not over, as these drivers were suddenly in the hunt for a podium position. And on lap 43, Depailler went sideways on one of the corners and was promptly rammed by a closely following X, who only minutes earlier had got past Holm in his McLaren. So while both cars were immediately out, I guess, I have to read out an extract from Mike Lang's book about X, and I think this is worth listening to, Rosa.
Okay.
Both cars, referencing Depailler and X, were put out of the race, although X did manage to limp back to the pits just in time to watch the Ferrari mechanics change Regazzoni's wheel in a manner that was to prove every bit as shambolic as his had been at Jarama earlier in the year.
Oh, no.
I loved
What's
reading that.
happened, Ferrari?
It was so funny to read that. I had to share it.
Oh, you were so good in Spain, and now you're doing a Lotus. And Regazzoni, he's the championship leader too.
And he got prime viewing position.
So when Regazzoni eventually rejoined, Holm, Hunt, Brambilla, and Watson had all relegated him to 7th. But that quickly became 6th, as Peterson then retired with a mechanical failure. So we have Reutemann leading with Holm in 2nd.
So what a dramatic ending. I mean, I bet Reutemann is crossing his fingers. Remember, he was leading the Argentinian Grand Prix with not long to go, with Holm right behind him. And now we have this. But this time Reutemann was able to finish, and he proceeded to win by over 42 seconds, with Holm 2nd, Hunt 3rd, Watson 4th in the Brabham chassis. Regazzoni recovered to 5th, and what may have been for that guy in this championship, and Brambilla getting his debut points in the March for 6th.
Wow. Okay, so to the drivers' standings, we've got Regazzoni leading on 46 points, Scheckter 2nd on 41, Lauda 3rd on 38, and Fittipaldi 4th on 37. Reutemann's there, he's on 23, probably on the edge, I think. He needs to win, doesn't he, to get up there?
I think with 3, 9, 18, 27, he could just make it, but it's starting to stretch out. It's starting to stretch a bit, isn't it? And Regazzoni's got a 5-point lead. It's not bad.
No, not bad. Ferrari's leading on the constructors. They're on 59, ahead of McLaren on 55 and Tyrrell on 45.
Okay. So we're up to race 13 of 15, the Italian Grand Prix. Let's see if this is one of the better Italian Grand Prix. We've had a bit of a bag a little lately.
We have.
So it's Monza, September 8, 52 laps, and the weather was again very hot. So here we are, our favourite slipstreaming track of the year, even though Austria is faster.
And Ferrari is in form, sort of, if they can get their act together here. This is the first time since 1961 that Ferrari were arriving at the Italian Grand Prix leading the constructors, and with one of their drivers leading the Drivers' Championship. That's a long time.
61 to 74, that is a long time, isn't it? And Ferrari team manager Mauro Foglieri's biggest concern was aero.
Along with everyone else, on a slipstreaming track like this, even Enzo Ferrari had to concede that there was a need for it. So to qualifying, Ferrari were of course eager to make an early mark, and they did, with Lauda setting a time faster than the 1973 pole of Peterson's. However, Reutemann in the Brabham surprised all when he achieved the fastest lap on Friday.
Yeah, that Brabham's turned on, hasn't it? So Reutemann certainly proved that his Austrian pace was no fluke. This Brabham and this driver really had the goods. So on Saturday, Reutemann was focusing more on car setup, and it was Lauda who eventually overhauled his time and secured pole position again. Reutemann remained 2nd, with Pache an impressive 3rd in the 2nd Brabham, and amazingly Watson up in 4th in the hexagon team using the Brabham chassis.
Weird. And what about Regazzoni and Scheckter and Fittipaldi?
Like the other contenders. Regazzoni was 5th, about 0.6 seconds behind Lauda. Fittipaldi was 6th, and Scheckter was a lowly 12th, 2 places behind Depailler, his teammate, in 10th. So mixed bag, sort of.
Mixed bag. Watson's qualifying was amazing. But interestingly, after he set his time, he had an accident and a rear wheel broke and he crashed up against the guardrail. The car was badly damaged. However, Eccleston, the Brabham team owner, was quick to lend the Hexagon team one of their spare works cars for the race.
What was in it for Eccleston?
Yeah. Can't he just be being nice, Louis?
Yeah, was it an anti-Ferrari challenge, building favours? Time will tell. But I will say one thing, that this is 74, remember? We know that. I keep saying that. But what I will say is that I did listen to another podcast about Williams team history, and it was about the late 1990s. And there was an incident between Williams and Ferrari were fighting for the championship, and McLaren played a bit of a wild card impact, and McLaren lent their services towards Williams over Ferrari. And Ron Dennis famously quoted as saying, "The right team won."
Oh.
So that mindset was very strong back in the 90s. I'm sure in the 70s it was even stronger.
Yeah. They are a customer team, so it helps with their relationship, I guess. So Peterson and the Lotus team, what's happening with them? Well, they're normally up there. They arrived at this track fully intent on using their new 76, which they've barely used because there were problems with it. And they had the old 72Es in hand as a backup. But Peterson found the new car just too slow. And when he drove the track in the 72E, he was over 1 second faster.
That would be quite convincing to change your mind, wouldn't it? Yeah. So he would qualify 7th in the 72E, and Ix, his teammate, would be 16th, which goes to show how good that car was and is, and in Peterson's hands in particular. So before race start, there was some tyre drama, as Goodyear recalled all of its latest tyres due to a concern about the tread lifting. And as a precaution, the older model tyres were instead swapped in, and this caused quite a bit of controversy before being accepted.
Did Mike Lang say which teams this affected?
No, he doesn't, but let's just roll with it. Either we spend forever doing research or we stay top line to keep the podcast interesting, yeah?
All right, so on the race, at the start, it was a really hot day. The drivers did their 2 warm-up laps, and Lauda this time made no mistake and beat Reutemann off the line to charge into the lead. In fact, in the words of Mike Lang, if anything, jump the flag to roll off into the lead. Jump the flag. Wow.
That's interesting. That's allowed in Italy because he's in a Ferrari. And don't worry about it. Lauda was really intent on making a show of it and was already pulling away with the 3 Brabham cars following, with Reutemann second, Pache third, Watson fourth, and the other Ferrari of Regazzoni in fifth.
It's like a Ferrari sandwich with triple Brabham beef.
Yeah. Or we have to pick a vegan thing for some, anyway, doesn't matter.
Vegan beef. So by lap 5, Regazzoni had carved his way through the Brabham trio, and the Italian fans were going nuts to have their team 1-2 so early in the race. I'm not that excited. I know what happens when it's too early.
Yeah, it can't be too early. That's the rule.
That's the rule. I know.
So by lap 5, Lauda had already built up a second lead over Regazzoni. And while Reutemann tried to hang on to Regazzoni, he was forced to retire on lap 12 with a broken gearbox. So end of that Brabham charge for him.
Yep. So Peterson was now in third, as Watson had an issue on lap 10, which caused him to go on straight through the first chicane and took him out of the race. And Pache was struggling with a chunking rear tyre.
I had to Google what a chunking rear tyre was. I sort of know what it is, but I was curious. Chunking is a common type of failure in tyres that occurs when small pieces of rubber come off the tyre. Most of the time it chunks off tread rubber that comes off the tyre, but in some cases part of the sidewall can also go missing. So that's pretty bad.
Over the next 12 laps, thanks for that, Louis. I sort of thought it was something to do like that. But anyway, so over the next 12 laps, there were problems all over the place as 5 drivers retired in quick succession, none of them key players. So this is fast becoming a race of attrition, not our normal slipstreaming battles of like 13 cars of the 60s, unfortunately.
Yeah. At half distance, Lauda was still 7 seconds ahead of Regazzoni, with Peterson a further 15 seconds back. Definitely no slipstreaming there. Peterson was not having his own way, as Fittipaldi was heavily hounding him.
Then suddenly on lap 30, remember this is a 52-lap race, blue smoke started to appear from Lauda's exhaust. The cheers from the crowd let everyone know that Regazzoni had gone by into the lead. Why would the cheers? I mean, Lauda's a Ferrari driver as well.
Yeah, I know, but he's Austrian, and I think Regazzoni is Swiss, but very Italian Swiss, if you know what I mean. Maybe because Regazzoni was the championship leader.
Yeah, maybe. All right. Well, Lauda retired 2 laps later with a blown engine.
Yeah, that's sad. Lauda will Regazzoni hold out? But then soon after, on lap 40, Regazzoni's engine started to show the same blue smoke.
Oh,
And
no.
The crowd were stunned in silence as they watched the second leading Ferrari head into the pits.
Gosh. In Italy, leading 1-2, both Ferraris out in the second half of the race. How disappointing. Anyway, so this left Peterson and Fittipaldi battling for the lead. On lap 39, Fittipaldi briefly outbraked Peterson, but Peterson regained the position. It was a battle all the way to the finish line.
And interesting, it was these two that were battling to the line against one another in 1973 as well. So Peterson held on to win by just 0.8 seconds after a thrilling battle for the remainder of the race.
Pretty sure that's what happened in 73 too, Louis.
Yeah, I think so.
And they didn't switch the drivers, and he won by, I think it was the same margin as well.
Yeah, you're right, actually. And
he did it in
the infamous hat throw incident.
That's right. Yep. And again, he did it in the 72E. I doubt he would have been in that position in the 76.
No, absolutely not.
Scheckter was third, Mazzario fourth in the Williams.
Yeah, and fifth was Pache, which was impressive considering his early pit stop problems with the tyre chunking. And Holm is up there in sixth. So Holm was really hot and cold this season, and it took all of these retirements for him to get some points. So good on him for sticking it up there.
I think we have said this is maybe his last season, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right, so Regazzoni's still in the lead on 46. Schecter's second on 45, but now we have Fittipaldi third on 43, and Lauda's slipped back now to fourth on 38.
Yeah, that's amazing. With two races, I'd say that's 2 races to go.
2 races to go. I know. Can Ferrari hold on, Luigi?
Yeah.
McLaren on the constructors has taken the lead. They're on 61, and Ferrari is on 59.
Okay.
All right. We're going to take a break here, and we'll come back to wrap up this topsy-turvy, very close season.
Yeah, one of the most closest ever, actually.
Yep. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.